So can you tell us about this look?
Saying that the Joker movie was a hit is a definite understatement, and not just when comparing it to the flop that is Birds of Prey. It racked up 11 Academy Award nominations and ended up winning the Best Original Score and Best Actor. But I'm not here to talk about why Joker was so great. I'm here to talk about what could have been. Deleted scenes are a pretty common DVD special feature, but this one would have completely changed the ending. Whether you think the way the story wrapped up was perfect or you believe it could have been better, you'll want to know what almost happened to Arthur Fleck. It's no secret that Kevin Smith is a massive comic book fan, and he was the one who revealed that the movie Joker almost had a remarkably different ending. On an episode of his Fat Man Beyond podcast, he revealed that the ending he saw in theaters was quite different than what he had expected. Originally, the scene was supposed to shift back to the infamous moment when Thomas and Martha Wayne lost their lives after leaving the theater. You know, the major life event which inspired Bruce Wayne to become the Dark Knight that we've seen play out pretty much every time we get a new incarnation of Batman. Anyway, according to Kevin Smith, there was supposed to be a flashback to that moment that would have revealed that it was really Arthur Fleck who claimed the lives of Thomas and Martha. Oh, but it gets worse. After watching his parents perish before his eyes, a young Bruce would naturally start screaming and crying. Arthur would initially start to walk away before stopping, turning back around, and with a shrug of his shoulders, pulling the trigger one more time, hitting Bruce before the credits started to roll.
I just like the sound of it.
Needless to say, that's not what audiences saw happen at the end of the movie. The ending wasn't exactly cheerful, but it was at least a little less terribly depressing than what Smith described in his podcast. In the cinematic release of Joker, Arthur Fleck eventually snaps after enduring a film's worth of indignities and abuses. Now, whether he was always the Joker deep down inside, or whether he became the Joker after what happened to him is debatable, but his reign of terror was definitely less so. Much like many aspiring comedians, Arthur struggled to turn his painful life traumas into hilarious jokes that would finally get him the applause and recognition he so craved. Wow, that's almost sadder than the alternate ending. Arthur loved watching the late-night Murray Franklin show and dreamed of someday being a guest on the program. But like most other dreams, the reality of this one was pretty disappointing, mostly because Murray just invited him on the show to make fun of him. Of course, if Murray knew what Arthur did to his former co-workers, he probably would have picked another guest for the evening. Instead, he got to witness Arthur transformed into the Joker, complete with face paint and a Cesar Romero-like suit. After sitting through the most awkward interview ever, Murray lost his life at the hands of the Joker right on television. Of course, Arthur was promptly arrested, but his crime had already hit the airwaves and incited a massive amount of riots which quickly spread across Gotham. Amidst the sea of people wearing clown masks and perpetuating crimes, one person comes across Thomas and Martha Wayne walking along with poor little Bruce. We all know how the story goes from there. Thomas and Martha lose their lives and Bruce's trauma manifests in him becoming Batman. But it's important to note that this random crime was not perpetuated by the Joker, at least not directly. It could be argued that Arthur Fleck was somewhat responsible, since his crime on Murray Franklin's show was what kicked off this particular crime wave. If he had not appeared on the show, would Thomas and Martha have made it home safely that night? Would Bruce have grown up to be a regular billionaire and not a billionaire who dresses up like a bat and fights crime?
Isn't that what they say?
These questions might be fun to think about, but that's really because there's no way to answer them in any kind of definitive way.
Oh, why is everybody so upset about these guys?
If Bruce never becomes Batman, maybe Gotham would be an even more dangerous place. Or maybe it would actually be safer, because criminals would have less incentive to be creative knowing they wouldn't have to fight a man dressed up as a bat.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
If we're blaming the loss of Thomas and Martha Wayne on Arthur, then how far back does the blame go? Is it Murray's fault for bringing him on the show in the first place and giving him a platform to showcase his antics? Is it his mom's fault for being a ball of crazy, or the mental health care system in Gotham for failing him so badly? The deleted ending is definitely a lot harsher than what we saw in theaters, but that doesn't necessarily make it better. The ending we got is a lot more open to interpretation. It's easy to see how some people could blame Arthur for the fact that Bruce will now grow up an orphan, but at the same time, he wasn't the one who pulled the trigger, nor did he command someone to perpetuate this particular crime. This ending trusts the interpretation of the viewer instead of spelling out Joker equals bad. And then there's the fact that the ending we didn't see includes Bruce taking a hit as well. Of course, the idea of that cute kid getting injured is sad, but what does it really add to the story? Is it supposed to imply that in this particular fictional universe, Bruce didn't survive and thus there is no Batman, and Joker is allowed to rampage through Gotham with the overworked, underfunded, frequently corrupt police force to stop him?
I don't know what to tell you.
Or are we just supposed to assume that Bruce survived the blow and this was just adding some extra trauma to the situation? This ending has us asking questions, but they're not the ones that change how we interpret the rest of the film. We all know the story of Batman. This movie gave us a closer look at a version of the Joker, and that should remain the focus. Then there's the final scene in the film just before the credits start rolling. Kevin Smith did say that the credits would have appeared immediately after the alternate ending, so we likely wouldn't have seen this if we got that version of the movie, which would have been an even greater shame. It's not really comparable to the two different scenes featuring the Wayne family, but it was a great way to wrap up the movie. We see Arthur in custody at Arkham State Hospital, and he's laughing to himself about a joke that he tells his psychiatrist she wouldn't understand. Then we see him running from the orderlies and leaving a trail of crimson footprints behind before the words "The End" appear on the screen. It's a rather lovely font, considering the subject matter of the film, but if you're a movie buff, it might look familiar. That's because this is the exact same font from the title card of Citizen Kane. Finishing off a film by referencing one of the most influential pieces of cinema of all time is definitely a bold move, but it really worked here. Not only was it a great way to wrap everything up, but it invited comparisons between Joker and Citizen Kane. Allow me to spoil a movie that came out over 70 years ago, just in case you've never seen it and somehow managed to avoid all cultural references regarding it up until now. The movie is about a rich man named Charles Kane, whose last word is Rosebud, which he utters as he drops a snow globe. A reporter is tasked with discovering the meaning of the word and digs through Charles's life trying to figure it out. Both of this movie and Joker tell the story of protagonists who are less than virtuous, were abandoned at young ages, and didn't have the happiest of childhoods. They amassed large followings over their lifetimes, and ultimately their ambitions were their downfall. Oh, and it turns out that Rosebud was the name of his childhood sled. That doesn't really have a parallel to Joker, but just in case you were curious, now you know. Making this the final scene in the movie not only paid tribute to Citizen Kane, but it really showed the kind of wacky lunacy the Joker is famous for. Instead of wondering if Bruce Wayne recovered from his wound, we are left wondering if what we saw really happened or not. Even though we see the film through the lens of Arthur Fleck, he's a very unreliable narrator. He even imagines an entire relationship with single mother Sophie who lives in his building. Once you realize that someone as stunning as Zazie Beetz didn't fall for an unemployed clown who still lives with his mom, you're forced to question everything you thought you knew about the movie.
In your dreams, Alfred.
The conclusion of Joker highlights this much better than the alternate ending would have. Now, I'm not trying to say the alternate ending would have been the worst thing in the world. In fact, in Tim Burton's 1989 Batman movie, it was revealed that this version of the Joker was responsible for the loss of Thomas and Martha Wayne. This fact definitely added another layer of complexity to the relationship between Batman and the Joker. Because of Jack Napier's crime, Bruce Wayne became an orphan who then became Batman, who then caused Napier to fall into a chemical vat and become the Joker. But this all worked in the movie because it was about the Joker and the Dark Knight and how their paths crossed and stories intertwined. It's safe to say that the movie Joker is vastly different than 1989's Batman. In fact, both versions of the Joker are extremely different from one another. They're far from interchangeable.
There, I said it.
In this version of the story, Joker being the person to physically take out the Waynes is just an unnecessary twist. There are already so many zigs and zags as we try to follow our unreliable narrator through the story that we don't need this detail which would rob us of all the sweet speculating and philosophizing we got to do after seeing the legitimate ending. This movie doesn't leave us with questions because of glaring plot holes or a rushed ending. It actually inspires people to think about what they've seen, which is an accomplishment for any movie, let alone one based on a comic book character. I'm not trying to say that it's the most cerebral film of all time or that it needs to be taken super seriously, but it presented an interesting and thought-provoking story that clearly resonated with a large audience. While an alternate ending is a big deal, there were plenty of scenes which didn't make it into the final version of Joker. According to director Todd Phillips, they filmed about 13 different versions of the scene where Murray Franklin introduces the Joker. Apparently, each one is slightly different, and there are a lot of great outtakes that didn't make it into the movie. There was another scene involving the Joker in a bathtub that even Phillips deemed too much for this R-rated movie. He claims it was too insane, and that's saying something considering the rest of the film. But if you want to see it anyway, you are sadly out of luck. According to Phillips, he's not a fan of extended cuts or deleted scenes because the movie that exists is already the exact movie he wanted to create. Regardless of how many of us would like to see the alternate ending, maybe that's the best possible argument for why this film should remain the way it is. We may be curious about what could have been, but it seems like Phillips is confident regarding the choices he made and what movie moments he chose to leave behind. Plus, it's not like we're going to be lacking in Batman content anytime soon. What do you think about the way this deleted scene would have totally changed Joker? Let us know what you think in the comments section below, and don't forget to click on the subscribe button to get access to more new videos from us here at ScreenRant. Bye for now.
You okay?